what if I told you no one has ever truly hurt you? Not your past, not the people who left, not even the ones who broke your heart. I know that sounds impossible, maybe even wrong, because you remember the pain. You felt it, you lived through it. But what if the real cause of that pain was never them? What if something inside your own mind was quietly turning small moments into deep wounds again and again? And the most dangerous part is, you don't even notice it happening. Right now, as you're watching this, your mind is still doing it, creating stories, adding meaning, turning simple events into emotional suffering. But here's the truth Buddhism has been teaching for centuries. The moment you see this clearly, people lose the power to hurt you, not because the world changes, but because you finally understand how your mind works. And once you understand that, you become emotionally untouchable. So before you watch further, pause for a second and ask yourself honestly, is your pain really coming from others or from the story you keep telling yourself? Because what you're about to discover can completely change the way you experience life. You were never hurt by them, only by the story in your mind. When something painful happens, it feels very real. It feels like the hurt is coming directly from the other person, from what they said or what they did. But if you slow down and look carefully, you will notice something important. The mind does not just see what happened and stay quiet. It instantly starts talking. It starts explaining, judging, and creating meaning. It takes a small moment and turns it into a full story. For example, someone does not reply to your message. The fact is simple. There is no reply. That is all that actually happened. But your mind does not stop there. It quickly says, they are ignoring me. I am not important. They don't care about me. Now notice what just happened. The pain did not come from the missing reply. It came from the story your mind created around it. The same thing happens when someone speaks in a harsh tone. The sound of their voice is just sound, but your mind adds meaning. They are disrespecting me. They are attacking me. I am being treated badly. And suddenly, a simple moment turns into emotional pain. This is how the mind works. It does not just see reality. It adds layers to it. It mixes facts with imagination and then presents it to you as truth. But here is the deeper truth that changes everything. The event is real, but the story is optional. You do not control what people do, but you do have control over how much meaning you give to it. You may not be able to stop the first thought from appearing, but you can choose whether to believe it or not. There is always a small space between what happens and what you feel. In that space, your mind creates its story. And in that same space, you have the chance to step back and simply observe. Instead of saying, this means they don't care about me, you can say, this is just my mind creating a story. Instead of reacting immediately, you pause. You watch the thought. You let it pass. When you start doing this, something powerful begins to happen. The story loses its grip on you. The emotions become lighter. The situation no longer feels as heavy as before. You begin to realize that most of your suffering was not coming from reality itself, but from the meaning you were giving to it. This does not mean you ignore your feelings or pretend nothing matters. It means you stop adding unnecessary pain on top of what already exists. And slowly, with awareness and practice, you learn to separate what actually happened from what your mind is saying about it. That is where your freedom begins. Because when you stop believing every story your mind tells you, you stop turning small moments into deep wounds. And when the story fades, the pain fades with it. Your pain begins the moment you try to control what you can't. There is a quiet habit inside every human being that often goes unnoticed, yet it controls so much of our emotional life. It is the need to control, not always in an obvious way, but in subtle, hidden ways that shape how we think, feel, and react. You want people to understand you without having to explain yourself. You want them to behave in a certain way, to respond with kindness, to be consistent, to meet your expectations. You want situations to go according to your plans. You want life to feel stable, predictable, and safe. At first, this seems normal. It feels reasonable. But if you look deeper, you will see that this desire to control is where your pain quietly begins, because the truth is simple and unavoidable. You cannot control people. You cannot control their thoughts, their moods, their decisions, or their actions. You cannot control how they see you or how they treat you. And you cannot control how life unfolds in every moment. Yet the mind keeps trying. It holds on to an idea of how things should be. It creates an image of the perfect outcome. It builds expectations around people and situations. And then it waits for reality to match that image. But reality does not follow your script. People act in ways you do not expect. They change without warning. They misunderstand you. They disappoint you. Situations shift suddenly. Plans fall apart. Things do not go the way you imagined. And the moment reality moves away from your expectation, something happens inside you. A tension begins. A resistance appears. You feel frustration, anger, disappointment, or even sadness. But look closely. Is the pain coming from what happened, or from the fact that it did not happen the way you wanted? This is the deeper truth Buddhism points to. Pain is not created by lack of control. Pain is created by the demand for control. You suffer not because life is unpredictable, but because you expect it to be predictable. You suffer not because people are imperfect, but because you expect them to behave perfectly according to your desires. The mind says, this should not be happening. And that sentence alone creates inner conflict. The more you try to control, the more you feel out of control. The more you hold on tightly, the more life feels like it is slipping away from you. And this creates a cycle. You try harder to control. You get more frustrated. You feel more hurt. And yet nothing truly changes. But the moment you begin to see this clearly, something shifts. You realize that control is an illusion. You begin to understand that life was never meant to be controlled in the first place. This does not mean you stop caring or stop taking action. It means you stop forcing life to fit your expectations. You still make choices. You still set intentions. You still move forward. But inside, you let go of the need for everything to go your way. You allow people to be who they are. You allow situations to unfold as they will. You stop trying to manage every outcome, and in that letting go, something unexpected happens. The tension disappears. The frustration softens. The emotional weight becomes lighter because you are no longer fighting reality. You are moving with it. You begin to experience a different kind of strength. Not the strength of control, but the strength of acceptance. A quiet confidence that says, I will handle whatever comes without needing to control everything. And this is where real peace begins. Not when life becomes perfect, but when you stop needing it to be. Nothing they did was about you. It was always about them. One of the deepest reasons you feel hurt is because you take things personally. When someone speaks in a harsh way, ignores you, disrespects you, or walks away from you, it feels like a direct attack. It feels like something about you is being judged, rejected, or not valued. But if you look more carefully, you will begin to see a truth that changes everything. People do not act because of you. They act because of who they are. Every person you meet is living inside their own mind. They are shaped by their past experiences, their childhood, their fears, their insecurities, their habits, and the emotional wounds they carry within them. All of this creates their behavior. So when someone acts in a certain way, they are not reacting to you as much as they are reacting from themselves. An angry person does not become angry because of you. They already have anger inside them, and it comes out in certain situations. A person who disrespects others is not lowering your value. They are simply showing their own lack of awareness or inner imbalance. A person who ignores you may not be rejecting you. They may be overwhelmed, distracted, or dealing with something you cannot see. But the mind quickly turns everything into something personal. It says, why did they do this to me? What did I do wrong? Why am I not enough? And this is where the pain grows. Because the moment you take something personally, you connect their behavior to your identity. You make it about your worth, your value, your importance, but their actions were never a measure of your worth. They were a reflection of their inner state. Imagine someone carrying stress, anger, or confusion inside them. When they speak or act, that inner state naturally shows up. It has nothing to do with you being worthy or unworthy. It is simply what they are carrying within. This understanding does not excuse bad behavior, and it does not mean you should accept everything without boundaries. But it frees you from unnecessary emotional suffering because you stop making everything about yourself. When someone is rude, instead of thinking, "They disrespected me," you begin to see they are struggling within themselves. When someone leaves, instead of thinking, "I was not enough," you begin to understand they are following their own path, shaped by their own mind. And in that shift, something powerful happens. The emotional weight disappears. You no longer feel attacked in every situation. You no longer feel wounded by every action. You begin to see people more clearly, without turning their behavior into a reflection of your value. This creates space inside you, a space where you can respond calmly instead of reacting emotionally. A space where you can choose understanding over pain. And slowly, you begin to feel lighter. Because when nothing feels personal anymore, nothing can truly hurt you in the same way. You are no longer carrying the burden of other people's inner struggles. You are simply seeing them for what they are. And that clarity is freedom. The real you was never attacked. Only your ego was. When you feel hurt, it feels deep and real. It feels like something inside you has been damaged. But if you slow down and look honestly, you will discover something surprising. Nothing real about you has been touched. Your body is still here. Your existence is still here. Your life continues exactly as it was before that moment. So what exactly was hurt? What was hurt is the image you have of yourself. From a young age, you begin to build a picture of who you are. You create an identity in your mind. You see yourself as someone who should be respected, appreciated, understood, and valued. You want to be seen in a certain way, and you become attached to that image. This image is what Buddhism calls the ego. The ego is not something physical. It is a mental idea, a story you keep repeating about yourself. It says, "This is who I am." And over time, you start believing that story completely. So when someone ignores you, criticizes you, or treats you in a way that does not match that image, it feels like an attack, not because your true self has been harmed, but because your ego feels threatened. For example, if you believe, "I am someone who deserves respect," and someone speaks to you harshly, the ego reacts immediately. It says, "This is wrong. They should not treat me like this." And from that reaction, anger or pain arises. But notice something important. If there were no fixed image of how you should be treated, would that moment hurt in the same way? The pain is not in the words or the action. The pain is in the gap between what happened and what your ego expected. The ego constantly seeks validation. It wants approval, recognition, and agreement. It wants to feel important and secure. And when it does not get these things, it feels threatened. But the deeper truth is this: your real self does not need validation. Your real self is not an image. It is not a label. It is not something that depends on what others think or say. It is simply your awareness, your presence, the part of you that is observing everything. That part of you does not get smaller when someone criticizes you. It does not become greater when someone praises you. It remains the same. But because you are so used to identifying with the ego, you feel every small challenge as if it is a threat to your entire being. The moment you begin to see this clearly, something starts to change. You start noticing when your ego is reacting. You catch yourself thinking, "They should respect me," or "How dare they say that to me," or "I deserve better than this." And instead of immediately reacting, you pause. You ask yourself, what exactly is hurt right now? Is it truly me, or just the image I have of myself? And slowly, you begin to separate the two. You begin to see that the ego is just a voice, just a pattern, just a habit of the mind. It is not who you truly are. When you stop identifying with that ego, Its reactions lose their strength. Insults do not hit as deeply. Criticism does not shake you as much. Even praise stops controlling you because you are no longer trying to protect an image. You are simply being, and when there is no image to defend, there is no constant fear of being attacked. This is where a deep kind of freedom appears, a quiet strength that does not need approval, a calm presence that does not react to every word or action. You are no longer fragile in front of people's opinions because you understand something most people never realize. The real you was never in danger. Only the ego was. And once you stop protecting that illusion, you become emotionally untouchable. Your expectations are quietly destroying your peace. There is something very subtle that shapes almost every emotion you feel, yet most of the time you are not even aware of it. It is your expectations. Expectations do not always appear as loud thoughts. They often exist quietly in the background of your mind, like hidden rules about how life should go and how people should behave. You expect people to understand you without needing too many words. You expect them to care in the way you care. You expect consistency, respect, honesty, loyalty. You expect situations to unfold according to your plans. You expect things to feel fair. At first, this seems natural. It feels right to expect good behavior and positive outcomes. But the deeper problem is not the expectation itself. The problem is the attachment you build around it, because once you expect something, your mind begins to believe it should happen. And the moment reality does not match that expectation, something inside you reacts. You feel disappointed. You feel hurt. You feel frustrated. Sometimes you even feel betrayed. But look closely at what really happened. Did the person actually promise to act the way you expected? Did life guarantee that things would go according to your plan? Most of the time, the answer is no. Your expectations were created silently within your own mind. They were never clearly expressed, never agreed upon, and never guaranteed. Yet you hold on to them as if they are rules that must be followed. This is why expectations are so dangerous. They create invisible pressure on people and situations without anyone even knowing it. You expect someone to check on you, but they do not. You expect appreciation, but it does not come. You expect someone to stay, but they leave. And then the mind immediately reacts. They don't care about me. They have changed. I was not important to them. But in reality, what hurts you is not just what happened. What hurts you is the gap between what you expected and what actually happened. The bigger the expectation, the bigger the disappointment. This is how expectations quietly destroy your peace. Not because the world is always wrong, but because your mind is constantly comparing reality to an imagined version of how it should be. Buddhism teaches that peace begins when you stop demanding that life matches your expectations. This does not mean you stop caring or stop having preferences. It means you stop attaching your emotional stability to specific outcomes. You can still hope for good things. You can still value respect and honesty, but you do not make your peace depend on whether those things happen or not. You allow people to be who they are, not who you expect them to be. You begin to see them clearly, instead of through the lens of your expectations. And when you do this, something powerful changes. You are no longer constantly disappointed. You are no longer reacting to every small difference between reality and your imagination. Instead, you become more open, more calm, and more understanding. You start to appreciate what is, instead of suffering over what is not. This does not make you weak. It makes you emotionally free, because when you release expectations, you remove the hidden conditions you placed on your happiness. You are no longer saying, "I will be at peace only if things go my way." You are saying, "I will remain at peace, no matter how things unfold." And in that shift, your peace becomes stable. It is no longer fragile. It is no longer dependent on others. It becomes something that comes from within you, not from the world around you. And that is when expectations lose their power over you, and peace becomes your natural state. The more you resist, the deeper you suffer. There is a natural reaction inside the human mind that activates the moment something unpleasant happens. It is the urge to resist, the urge to push away, deny, or fight against what is already happening. When something does not go your way, the mind immediately says, "This should not be happening." When you feel pain, it says, "I don't want this." When life becomes difficult, it says, "This is wrong." At first, this reaction feels normal. It even feels like strength, like you are standing up against what you do not like. But if you observe closely, you will begin to see that this resistance is not helping you. It is actually increasing your suffering. Pain, by itself, is a simple experience. It is a feeling that arises in the moment. It could be emotional, like sadness or disappointment, or physical, like discomfort or tension. But suffering is something different. Suffering is what happens when the mind starts fighting that pain. Instead of allowing the feeling to exist and pass, the mind holds on to it. It complains about it. It replays it. It argues with it. It says, "Why is this happening to me?" Or "This is not fair." And this mental resistance creates a second layer of pain on top of the first one. For example, if someone hurts you, the initial pain is natural, but then the mind begins to resist. It keeps thinking about what happened over and over again. It imagines different outcomes. It holds on to anger, regret, or frustration. Now the pain is no longer just from the moment itself. It is being continuously recreated by your resistance to it. This is why two people can go through the same situation, yet one suffers deeply while the other moves on more easily. The difference is not the event. The difference is the level of resistance. The more you resist, the more you hold the pain in place. It becomes stuck inside you, repeating again and again. But when you stop resisting, something completely different happens. Acceptance begins. Acceptance does not mean you like what is happening. It does not mean you agree with it or approve of it. It simply means you stop fighting the reality of the moment. You allow it to be exactly as it is, without adding extra struggle on top of it. When you do this, the tension inside you starts to release. The mind becomes quieter. The emotional pressure begins to soften. The feeling is still there, but it is lighter. It moves through you, instead of getting trapped inside you. Think of it like holding water in your hands. The tighter you squeeze, the more pressure you create. But when you relax your grip, the water flows naturally. Your emotions work in the same way. The more you try to control or suppress them, the stronger they become. But when you allow them to exist without resistance, they pass on their own. Buddhism teaches that peace is not found by eliminating all pain from life. That is impossible. Pain will always come in different forms. Peace is found in how you relate to that pain. When you stop resisting, you stop adding unnecessary suffering. You begin to trust that every feeling is temporary. You allow it to rise, stay for a while, and then fade away. This creates a deep sense of calm inside you. You are no longer fighting every situation. You are no longer exhausted from trying to control every feeling. Instead, you become more open, more flexible, and more grounded. You learn to say, "This is what is happening right now, and I can handle it." And in that acceptance, you discover a strength that is far greater than resistance. A quiet strength that does not break under pressure. A calm presence that allows life to move through you without overwhelming you. Because when you stop fighting reality, you stop suffering from it. Your mind is lying to you, and you keep believing it. Every single day, your mind is talking to you. From the moment you wake up until the moment you fall asleep, there is a constant stream of thoughts moving through your head. Some are small and harmless, but many of them are powerful enough to shape how you feel, how you see yourself, and how you experience the world. The problem is not that thoughts exist. The problem is that you believe almost every thought you have. If a thought says, "I'm not good enough," you feel insecure. If a thought says, "They don't care about me," you feel hurt. If a thought says, "Something is wrong with me," you feel anxious. You treat these thoughts as if they are facts, as if they are the truth. But in reality, most of these thoughts are not truth at all. They are guesses. They are assumptions. They are old patterns repeating themselves again and again. Your mind is not a perfect tool. It is influenced by your past experiences, your fears, your insecurities, and your habits. It often creates negative interpretations because it is trying to protect you, even if those interpretations are not accurate. For example, if someone does not respond to you, your mind might say, "They are ignoring me." But is that a fact? Or is it just one possible explanation out of many? Maybe they are busy. Maybe they forgot. Maybe they are dealing with something you do not know about. But the mind chooses the story that creates the strongest emotional reaction, and you immediately believe it. This is how suffering begins, not because the thought appeared, but because you accepted it without questioning it. Buddhism teaches something very simple, but very powerful. You are not your thoughts. Thoughts come and go, just like clouds in the sky. They appear, they stay for a moment, and then they disappear. But the sky itself remains unchanged. In the same way, your awareness remains steady while thoughts pass through it. But when you forget this, you become your thoughts. You get pulled into them. You live inside them. A single negative thought can take over your entire mood. It can change how you see yourself, how you see others, and how you react to the world. But the moment you begin to observe your thoughts instead of believing them, everything starts to shift. You begin to notice the patterns. You see how your mind jumps to conclusions. You see how it repeats the same fears again and again. You see how it creates stories that are not always true. And instead of reacting immediately, you pause. You say, "This is just a thought. It is not necessarily reality." That small pause creates space. In that space, you are no longer controlled by your thoughts. You are no longer dragged into every story your mind creates. You can choose to let the thought pass without giving it power. This does not mean you will never have negative thoughts again. The mind will continue to produce them. That is its nature. But you will stop believing every thought, and that changes everything. Because once you stop believing every thought, you stop reacting to every thought. And when you stop reacting to every thought, your emotions become more stable. You are no longer on an emotional roller coaster, controlled by whatever your mind says in the moment. Instead, you become calm, aware, and grounded. You begin to experience life more clearly, without the constant noise of false stories controlling you. And slowly, you realize something very freeing. Your mind may still speak, but you don't have to listen to everything it says. This pain feels permanent, but it's already fading. When you are in the middle of emotional pain, it feels heavy, real, and endless. It feels like this feeling will stay with you forever. The mind tells you, this is not going away. And in that moment, it truly feels like that is the truth. But if you look closely, you will see something very different. Nothing in life stays the same. Everything is constantly changing, even when it feels like it is not. Your thoughts change from moment to moment. Your emotions rise and fall throughout the day. Your mood shifts without you even noticing sometimes. The people around you change, situations change. Even your own perspective changes over time. Yet when pain comes, the mind treats it as permanent. It holds on to it. It repeats it. It keeps bringing it back again and again. And because of that, the pain feels like it is staying. But in reality, what is happening is very different. The feeling itself is already moving. It is already changing. It is already fading. But the mind keeps recreating it by thinking about it again and again. For example, something hurts you today. The moment passes, but your mind keeps going back to it. You replay what happened. You think about what you should have said. You imagine different outcomes. You question why it happened, and every time you think about it, the feeling comes back again. So it feels like the pain is staying, but actually, it is being recreated. This is why it feels permanent. Buddhism teaches the truth of impermanence, which means that nothing lasts forever. Every experience, every feeling, every situation is temporary. Even the strongest emotions cannot stay the same forever. If you sit quietly and observe your feelings without interfering, you will notice that they change. They rise, they peak, and then they slowly fall. But when you hold on to them mentally, you stop that natural process. You keep the feeling alive by feeding it with your thoughts. The moment you stop feeding it, something powerful happens. The feeling begins to fade on its own, not because you forced it to go away, but because that is its natural nature. Think of it like a wave in the ocean. A wave rises, reaches its highest point, and then falls back down. It cannot stay at its peak forever. Your emotions work in the same way. No matter how strong the pain feels, it cannot stay at that intensity forever. But if you keep adding energy to it through thinking, you keep pushing the wave up again and again. When you understand this deeply, your relationship with pain begins to change. You stop fearing it as something permanent. You stop believing the voice in your mind that says, "This will never end." Instead, you begin to trust the natural flow of your emotions. You allow the feeling to be there without trying to hold on to it or push it away. You sit with it. You observe it. You let it move through you, and slowly, you notice it becoming lighter. You notice the intensity decreasing. You notice space returning inside you. This understanding brings a deep sense of relief because you realize that no matter what you are feeling right now, it is not permanent. It is already changing, even if you cannot fully see it yet. And that truth gives you patience. It gives you calm. It reminds you that you do not have to fight the feeling or escape from it. You only need to allow it, because time, awareness, and acceptance will do what force never can. They will gently carry the pain away, and what once felt endless will slowly become just another passing moment. Letting go doesn't mean you lost. It means you're free. Letting go is one of the most misunderstood ideas. When you hear the words "let go," it can feel uncomfortable. It can feel like giving up, like losing something important, like accepting defeat. The mind immediately resists it. It says, if I let go, it means I didn't fight enough. If I let go, it means they win. If I let go, it means this didn't matter. But this understanding is not true. Letting go is not about losing something valuable. It is about releasing the pain that comes from holding on too tightly. When you hold on to a person, a situation, or an outcome, you are not just holding the experience itself. You are holding the expectations, the memories, the emotions, and the idea of how things should be. You keep replaying what happened. You keep thinking about what could have been different. You keep wishing things would return to how they were, and without realizing it, you trap yourself inside that experience. You are no longer just living your life. You are living inside a moment that has already passed. This is where the suffering comes from. It is not the event itself that keeps hurting you. It is your attachment to it. You are holding on to something that is no longer here and expecting it to give you peace. But the more tightly you hold, the heavier it becomes. Think about it like carrying a heavy object in your hands. At first, it feels manageable, but the longer you hold it, the heavier it feels. Your arms get tired. Your body feels strained, yet you keep holding on, believing you cannot put it down. Letting go is simply placing that weight down. You are not denying that it existed. You are not pretending it didn't matter. You are just choosing not to carry it anymore. This is where true strength lies, because it takes more awareness to release something than to hold on to it. It takes courage to say, "This is no longer serving my peace." When you let go, you are not losing control. You are reclaiming it. You are deciding that your inner peace is more important than holding on to pain, resentment, or attachment. You can still care about someone and let go of your attachment to how they should behave. You can still value an experience and let go of your need for it to continue. You can still remember something and let go of the emotional weight attached to it. Letting go does not make you empty. It creates space. Space for peace. Space for clarity. Space for new experiences to enter your life. When you hold on to everything, there is no room for anything new. But when you release, life begins to flow again. You begin to feel lighter. Your mind becomes quieter. Your heart becomes less burdened. You stop being controlled by what happened in the past or what you wish would happen in the future. You return to the present moment, and in that moment, you realize something powerful. You were never meant to carry everything forever. You were meant to experience, learn, and then release. This is what freedom feels like. Not the absence of experiences, but the absence of attachment to them. Because when you are no longer holding on to everything, nothing is holding on to you. Your peace was never in their hands. You just forgot. For a long time, it feels like your emotions are controlled by the world around you. When people treat you well, you feel good. When they ignore you, you feel anxious. When they hurt you, you feel broken. It seems as if your peace depends on how others behave and how life unfolds. Slowly, without realizing it, you give your power away. You begin to believe that your happiness is in someone else's hands, that your calm depends on their words, that your stability depends on their actions. And the more you believe this, the more fragile your inner world becomes. Because people change, situations change. Life is never fully in your control. If your peace depends on something outside of you, it will always feel uncertain. You will feel good one moment and disturbed the next. You will constantly react to what is happening around you. You will feel like you are being pulled in different directions, depending on how others act. But here is the truth that changes everything. Your peace was never in their hands. It only felt that way because you forgot where it truly comes from. Peace does not come from people always treating you right. It does not come from everything going your way. It does not come from having perfect situations. Peace comes from how you relate to what happens. Two people can face the same situation. One becomes overwhelmed, angry, and hurt. The other remains calm, steady, and clear. The difference is not the situation. The difference is their inner state. One is reacting automatically. The other is aware. This awareness is where your power lies. In every moment, something happens outside of you, and then something happens inside of you. The outside event is not always in your control, but your inner response is where your freedom exists. You may not be able to stop someone from speaking harshly, but you can choose how deeply you let those words affect you. You may not be able to control what people do, but you can control how long you hold on to it. You may not be able to change every situation, but you can change how you experience it. This is what it means to take your power back. Instead of reacting instantly, you begin to pause. You notice what you are feeling without being overwhelmed by it. You observe your thoughts without believing every one of them. You create a small space between what happens and how you respond. And in that space, you begin to choose. You choose calm instead of anger. You choose understanding instead of blame. You choose to let go instead of holding on. This does not happen perfectly every time. There will still be moments when old patterns take over. But with awareness and practice, those moments become fewer and shorter. Slowly, your inner world becomes more stable. You are no longer easily shaken by every small thing. You are no longer depending on others to feel okay. You are no longer giving your emotional control away without realizing it. Instead, you begin to feel grounded. There is a quiet strength inside you, a calm presence that remains even when things around you are not perfect. You realize that peace is not something you need to search for. It is something you return to. It was always there, beneath the noise of your thoughts, beneath the weight of your expectations, beneath the reactions you learned over time. You did not lose your peace. You only lost awareness of it. And now, as you begin to see more clearly, you remember that no one has the power to control your inner state unless you allow it. You remember that your response is always your choice, even if it does not feel easy at first. You remember that peace is not something fragile that can be taken away. It is something steady, something constant, something that lives within you. And once you truly reconnect with that truth, something powerful happens. You stop chasing peace outside. You stop depending on others for emotional stability. You stop feeling controlled by every situation. Instead, you become calm, aware, and centered, not because life became easier, but because you finally realized where your peace truly comes from. And once you see that clearly, no one can take it away from you again. If you've stayed until this moment, something inside you is already changing. You are beginning to see what most people spend their entire lives missing. You are beginning to understand that your pain was never controlled by others. It was shaped by how you saw things, how you held on to them, and how you reacted. And now you have a choice. You can go back to living the same way, reacting to everything, carrying every word, every action, every disappointment, or you can start living with awareness. You can start observing instead of reacting. You can start letting go instead of holding on. You can start choosing peace instead of creating suffering. This is not something that changes overnight. But the moment you become aware, the transformation has already begun. So from today, try this one simple thing. The next time something hurts you, pause. Don't react immediately. Ask yourself, is this pain coming from what happened or from the story in my mind? That one question can change everything. And if this message made you think differently, even for a moment, then don't just keep it to yourself. Subscribe to this channel, because here we don't just talk about life, we learn how to live it with clarity, awareness, and peace. Share this with someone who needs it, because sometimes one message can wake a person up in ways nothing else can. And most importantly, start practicing what you've learned, because knowledge does not change your life, awareness does. And once you become aware, no one can control your inner peace ever again.